Hey, what's good, everybody? Welcome to episode 145 of the In a Good Way podcast. I wanted to talk about a few things today. Obviously, today is the new moon in Aquarius, which had me out, right? I couldn't get out of bed and I was just exhausted. I have no idea why. I was like, man, but it was like to where, I finally just drank some coffee because I was like, okay, that's enough. I can't just lay in bed, right? I was just burned out. I have no clue why. But anyways, um the planetary alignment, I was feeling that big time. I don't know if everybody else felt it, but I was having so many visions and just so many spiritual things were happening, right? And I'm about to get into all that, but first, I wanted to express my deepest condolences for the passing of someone that was a guest on the podcast. His name was Tom Palladino, right? I believe he was the guest in episode 87. And I was barely made aware, what was it, last week or during this past weekend? But he had passed away since November, right? And I looked on the website. It didn't give too much information like how he passed or anything. It was more about who he was, right? And just from our interaction here, I'll put a link to the podcast because I don't want to misquote anything. I got to see it again. But I know Tom was trying to make the world a better place, right? He had invented this machine to heal people, right? It was based, I know he gave credit to Nikola Tesla, right? That it was based off his technology or inventions or knowledge, right? And that's a beautiful thing. He was very passionate. He said he had been doing it for decades, right? He dedicated his life to this walk of, you know, creating something to heal people, right? So, that's a beautiful thing, right? And that's part, it always reminds you, right? It's unfortunate that things like that always remind you to like leave behind your story, right? Don't wait for others to tell your story because they might not say it exactly how you would, right? Um, and that even reminded me, right? Like this book that I spoke about already, Visionary by Graham Hancock. That Adrian who watches the podcast had given to me. Even in that, right? I think Graham Hancock near the end of the book even talks about how scholars, that's one thing I didn't like, right? It was like how scholars were even trying to say like, oh, the plant medicines, maybe Jesus was doing ayahuasca or this and that, right? And so that's why it reminded me, I never really bite my tongue about my spiritual experiences, but I also understand why the spirit world made sure I was sober, right? And I noticed that since earlier on my walk, right? Whenever people questioned anything, once they saw I was more immersed in my native culture and going to ceremonies, it was always like, oh, did you do this? Did you do that? Right? So even that part where scholars are so like, I don't want to say certain, right? Because I got to listen to the book again, right? I'm sure it's one of those that I have to listen to over and over. But that always rubs me the wrong way because I'm here, I'm alive right now, so I can share that story. I can say that, hey, there's some of us that have these gifts. I had it long before, years and years before I ever even, decades before I ever even tried anything, right? So I'm here to say that we do have these gifts, right? That there is some of us that don't have to take anything, no LSD, no THC, no um peyote, ayahuasca, nothing, right? To have these experiences, right? To connect with beings from other dimensions, to have visions, premonitions, to be able to see the past, present, and future, right? So, I'm able to share these stories, and that's a reminder, right? When we see someone pass. But I don't think he ever held back, right? When I saw like the way Tom was dedicated to something, right? Um, I've often jumped from thing to thing to thing. Well, not really so much jump, but I try to do a lot of things at once, right? But not that I haven't dedicated my life to this spiritual walk. If anything, I did dedicate my life to this spiritual walk, right? So, anyways, yeah, again, my condolences and my heart goes out to his family, right? I know his wife took over the business, so it's still up. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to try it out to give my testimonial about the technology, but it looks like there's a lot of testimonials on the website where there are those that have been healed, right, by Tom's device or his services, right? So, I'll put a link to all that. Um, you know, so piggybacking off of that, um, I wanted to talk about that because I had this very amazing experience the other day. I don't know how many I wrote it in. It was a couple of days ago, right? But it was like I had this vision that was very significant because at first I was confused, right? I was very confused, but there was all this symbolism. Um, there was, and which is funny because in one of the spiritual groups that I attend, we talked about symbolism. So I was like, wow, it's so crazy, right? It's all about the synchronicities, right? But anyway, so this experience, what happened was I was in this place, right? Everything was green, and all of a sudden this mountain lion starts circling me, right? This mountain lion starts circling me, and I'm kind of like, all right, it's still at a distance. I'm good. At first, I didn't feel any threat from it, but it keeps getting closer and closer. So I'm like, okay, what's going on? I start backing up, and then I start trying to make my escape because I'm like, okay, I think this thing does want to like attack me or it's looking at me as lunch or something. So I'm like, all right, let me back up. Then there's this big tree, right? So I think I'm trying to like at least cover one of my sides with this tree. And then the mountain lion starts coming, right? Which was surprising to me. I was like, oh wow, like I guess this mountain lion wants beef, right? Or whatever. So it's coming and then it shapeshifts, right? And it shapeshifts, but there's this big old thing on the ground, and I couldn't really make out what it was. But then it looks like it's shapeshifting into a dog, and Cerberus, I believe, is the as they call it, the Hounds of Hades, right? Let me look it up. Cerberus, yeah, Cerberus, right? The so it looks like that, like Cerberus, right? So I'm like, what in the world? So then as it's still like molted with this sting or I don't know what's going on, I start like, okay, let me take off while it's still doing whatever shape-shifting thing it's doing by this big old tree. And as I turn, there's like a huge eagle, right? So there's an eagle like bigger than me, right, on the ground, but it's complete, right? It's complete. And then as I'm looking at it, I'm like, what? And then um after that, I go down to get like a feather, but I think I might have not had a really a big offering to give for like the whole eagle. So for some reason, I think I just take like one feather, right? Or I think first, right, the Cerberus the Cerberus comes running around, right? Comes running around, and then it shapeshifts into a griffin, right? And then I'm like, what? And then so then I think I go to I don't know why I felt like the eagle feather was gonna protect me, so I go get the eagle feather and I just get the feather, right? And then the griffin speaks to me and it's like, you're only gonna get one feather. And I'm like, what? And then for some reason I say Hecate, and I'm like, what? Like, why are you turning on me? Like, cause I felt like, it was stalking me, like it kept following me, it wasn't letting me leave. And I'm like, what in the world's going on here? And I was like, why are you turning on me? I felt like it was Hecate's that had shapeshifted, because I guess then the face kind of looked like a woman, right? So I'm like I was just confused. And then I only had a marker and the eagle feather, so I'm like poking at it. When it gets too close, I'm poking at it, it backs up, but it has this smile, and I'm like, what? And then I go with the feather, then with the thing, then with the feather, right? So I have these two things, right? So then after that, finally, I think I just get tired and I go, whatever. And then I don't know if Hecate or the griffin jumps out at me, and then I just black out and I wake up and I'm on being rolled like on a gurney, it seems like. So there's a light above, and then there's a doctor, right? A doctor over me, right? And then they're like, wheeling me. And then after that, so I was like, oh wow, did Hecate or the griffin kill me and I was brought back to life? And then after I close my eyes again and boom, I wake up in my bed. So I'm like, what in the world was that? So I start writing all that stuff down, right? Then a couple days after that, okay, so this was a few days ago. So then a couple days after that, I'm doing a reading and the world comes out, right? And when I go like that, I forget that the world, like she has her fun stuff out, right? So, because I usually use another deck, so I was like, oh, I'm like, oh man. So I cover it up on the thing so YouTube doesn't whatever, right? But then after that, I'm like, I think I'm gonna be using this deck from now on because I like it. You know, it shows the chakras and all this different stuff. So I'm like, I get a marker and I go to like, black out her fun stuff. And then after that, like I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that. Like I feel like I don't want to mess up the thing. And then I'm like, yeah, but I'm gonna be using this deck. Nah, but it's kind of small, so like I could just hold it back, and then I'm like, and then I'm gonna do it again. But I am gonna use this deck. Then I'm like, no, and then it clicks. I'm like, what? Wait a second. And everything from the dream, right? The world, it has like the eagle. It has it has a lion, not a mountain lion, but it's still a lion. It has the woman, and then the bull. I don't know. I guess I kind of related that because when I don't know if at first it was like there was this big old thing, so I was like maybe it was eating a bull, and then it started shape shifting into Cerberus or something, right? And then to the griffin. So it was just strange, right? And the griffin is a combination of different animals together, right? And then the woman's face. So I was like, what in the world, right? And then the way the mountain lion was circling me, the world, right? And then I was holding two things in the hand, and in the world card, it's like a woman dancing with the two things, the two wands in her hands, right? And after I looked it up, I was like, I was so fascinated. I listened to I don't know how many videos about the world, right? And so yeah, I was just blown away. Oh, and the way, yeah, the it was circling me, and then when I finally gave in, because that's what the world represents, is like there's nothing you could do to stop it. This is the way it's going, right? There's nothing you could do. And I didn't realize also at the moment that it's the last. Even when I did the reading, I don't think I realized it's the last card in the whole major arcana. The fool's journey has ended, right? Boom. And I was like, oh wow, see my guts lighting up. I was like, oh wow, like I completed the whole journey. And obviously what's been happening more for me now, like what happened with the merger, and even that, right? I had seen a merger with what is considered like a divine feminine, right? What, like Lilith, right? And so that was a beautiful thing when I listened to the book, the Graham Hancock book, Visionary. He talked about when he was on ayahuasca, how his consciousness was merging with his dad's. And so that's what had happened to me. I felt like my conscious, not I felt, I mean, it happened, right? I was like, my consciousness was merging with Lilith. And later on, I had another vision. I'm not going to share that one yet. But so I was like, oh, wow, he had a seed. So that's what I'm saying. Like, when they say these things, what some people do need these plant medicines for happens to me natural. I don't need all these things, right? So it's beautiful that that's available to those that don't have access to that, right? But for me, it happens without me needing any of these plant medicines. But that's what they're there for. They're there to help those that need it, right? So, anyways, I was having this experience too prior to this. So it's been kind of a whole thing of like I think it's been a few, like over a month for sure. I forgot when I made that video about Hecate, and I was making videos. That's why I love making the videos, and that's why I knew I had to make this one, right? Because I was kind of being lazy about it, but it's because so many things have been going on. I wasn't sure which ones I was gonna share, which ones I wasn't, right? So, anyways, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so one lady talked about the world being that even the figure of the woman is actually a woman and a man. So that was interesting. I had never heard that, right? So I don't know if it's true, right? Um, but she was saying how the private part on the bottom is covered, so it would like, and I was like, wow, that's so interesting that I saw this merger, right, of like divine feminine, divine masculine, or experience, a spiritual thing like that, and the world is this woman described it as that, right? So everything was there. So I was like, wow, I literally dreamed like the world, the completion, right? And I know that has happened to me in the past where I'll experience something before the collective energy kind of starts experiencing it, because then I'm able to help, right? I'm able to say, like, in case like with the pandemic, right? My pandemic was like 2019. Then and when everyone was like kind of losing it during 2020, it was like I had already had my pandemic in 2019, right? Losing everything, losing work, losing a loved one, like everything that could have happened, right? Happened to me like before, right? So again, right? Like I know this is the 9 years, like today is Lunar New Year, right? So technically, some people will consider this is the actual New Year. And so, some it's the spring, some right now. And so it was funny that that happened like now, right? The completion, you know. And what else? What else? I don't want to lose my train of thought. So yeah, it was just interesting. Like I've dreamed tarot before, right? Before I even knew what tarot was, I remember dreaming of tower and me knocking down towers, and it was so interesting. Now, when I was led to tarot through visions, like I had never in this lifetime I didn't know what tarot was, but then I guess obviously it's in there already, right? All these things. Then I put the pieces together. Then you go backwards, right? Then everything starts going backwards, right? But so, anyways, this is all happening as I finally embrace that, right? Like doing readings and immersing myself on the walk as like you know I mean, we'll call it a medium just for the sake of those that don't understand, but really having like a lot of the spiritual gifts, right? If not like, I know with the what they call the clair senses, right? Like I have pretty much all of them, right? Or not pretty much, I have all of them, right? Clair audience, clair sentient, clair, I forgot what the scent one is called, but all of these I have experience, right? I think my biggest one though is clairsentient. I do feel like when I feel things, it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it's interesting, right? So, anyways, so as I'm walking this, I think that's why the completion, right? That old me had passed the like died, right? The old me has it's like officially, I'm over making a word, officially come to a completion, right? And it's time for like a new me to move forward, right? I even like it was funny because this artist came to me in a vision too, and even that I realized like wow, all these like different artists that came to me even when I was younger and I didn't realize it. So everything starts connecting, right? It's like wow, and and I realized all of them died tragically that have came to me, right? Being murdered, recently. Like even this artist named Chino Excel came to me in a vision, and I put the pieces together. Like I was like, oh wow, like he took his life, right? The other ones had been murdered. He took his life, and I noticed when I do readings for people, like the majority, it's something traumatic, right? I'm able to connect with something traumatic, right? Uh, Not just always, right? But at least let's say at least that's 50%, and the other ones might be like just normal, right? But like everyday kind of stuff. But that's been kind of one of the things, right? Um yeah. So anyways, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say, right? It feels like very much before the 9 year even started, I already feel like something completed and I'm going forward towards something else, right? Towards like this new destiny. Now it's like the fool's journey all over again, right? Now it's all new, like a clean slate, like what do I want to do, right? And I think I already made up my mind, which is why it's heading in this direction, right? Of embracing this spiritual walk, right? More, right? Like unapologetically, not being afraid to speak about these things or about, like all this stuff, right? So it's interesting, right? So oh yeah, so the last thing I'm gonna say, so even with this experience after, right, I was tapping into like when I was being and I was like, man, I bet once I'm hypnotized it was part like an abduction or something, right? Like when I'm on this gurney and right away, like I start seeing like a being that wasn't human, like rolling me on this gurney. So I was like, wow, like that's so crazy that right when I thought that, I saw this other being. So it really feels like if there was like a literal, like some kind of death, right? Something. So it's just, it's pretty amazing, right? Like the way, not just symbolic, but like because the whole experience that was very symbolic, right? And even Hecate, I feel bad that I was like, oh, why are you turning on me? But no, it was more. It was just part of the. And even now, right? Let me read this last thing, and then I'll end it there because I don't want to make this too long. I just wanted to share definitely about Tom, and then share this experience that I had with the world, right? I should have been writing down every dream I've ever had where that was symbolic, like with the tarot, right? Because I love the journey, right? It's such a amazing story, and when it happens to you, you're like, oh wow, like it's so crazy the way the spirit will communicate to you. What was I gonna look up? The Griffin, right? Spiritual meaning of the Griffin. A griffin represents a powerful combination of strength, wisdom, and protection. Wow. See, so maybe that was the message, right? They were trying to show me that I'm protected. Wow, my whole gut's lighting up. Often signifying the union of earthly power, lion, and heavenly insight, eagle, which were both present, making it a symbol of divine power, vigilance, and guardianship, right? So all those things were present. Yeah, so and it also represents the human and the divine, right? So it was like so maybe that was the merger. I didn't even get that part, right? Like, and it was crazy, right? Because even as it was shape shifting, there was like a molting together or something, right? But even that, right? Being like, I've been awarded in this, it reminded me of like, the saying of like Christ, like store your gifts in heaven, right? Like, and I always knew that meant more, right? Like, I was given a red tail hawk feather in the spirit world, and I knew how important that was. So here I was being given a whole eagle, and even the griffin or Hecate was like, "You're only gonna take a feather," so that was pretty interesting. But I was awarded a whole eagle, right? And that's very important. Even this medicine man, where I would go to ceremony, he talked about how he had a staff with an eagle, right? A whole eagle, and he said that it came from the stars, right? That the eagle literally came flying and boom, crashed right into his windshield. And it was and he still had it, right? And he knew it was a gift from the spirit world, right? From the creator, the divine, right? And and so in that way, right? Like I was being given this whole big eagle, right? So it's very symbolic. And even the red tail hawk feather. And even in 2023, I was awarded this pendant in the spirit world. It looked like this ancient place, right? This ancient place, and I was given this pendant um that had like the symbol that represented like an ascended master, and it's been since 2023, and I feel like I've never part of me stepping into whatever they had given me is like that, right? Like the walk, I'm barely it took me 2 years, so it's not like anybody jumps into whatever right away, right? Like I'm not exempt from that, right? Like even I'll not that I have doubts, but I guess you just whatever you have to go through what you have to go through, right? To finally or them pushing you, right? That's the thing about the world. There's no stopping it. So even me trying to like oh, did I say? Yeah, I said, right? When I was gonna scratch out, that's when it hit me about the marker, right? And then having the two things. Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah, I did say it, right? So but just that, right? Like yeah, so it's pretty interesting this whole thing, right? I'm very excited to be on this journey. I don't know if there was anything else I wanted to share. Let me see. I think I had made these notes, but I think that's it for now. I don't really think there's my whole guts lighting up. Like, yeah, that's good enough, right? Yeah. Because I don't want to make this too long. So yeah, okay. In closing, I'll just say, yeah, make sure you're telling your stories, right? Don't wait until it's too late, I guess, right? One of my first encounters with you know on the other side with the spirit, like that's what they told me, right? Like they were like, don't waste your time, right? Don't waste your time there, like. And I appeared, right? It was like I don't know if I was in my early 20s, and it was like I appeared in what appeared to be the Akashic records, and it was they're all telepathic, right? But they were telling me like that they had messed up, that to don't waste my time, right? To make sure I learned as much as I could while I was here, to so whatever, that kind of started me on my trajectory, right? Obviously, like I got it, right? I got it when they told me. So make sure you don't waste your time, right? Make sure you don't wait for someone else to tell your story and maybe do it inaccurately, right? Don't wait for someone else to tell your story when you can. Don't think like, oh, I have tomorrow, I have tomorrow, I have tomorrow, and then what, right? So I'm happy to be able to share these things, and yeah, I guess on that note, I'll end it. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you are all well. Hope you've been kind to yourself during this time. If it hit you just like it hit me, let me know in the comments, right? Because let me know that I wasn't the only one. It's always nice to know that other people suffered with you. Now I'm just playing. I don't want anybody to suffer, but it wasn't suffering. It was just I think that to me is almost like suffering, like having to stay in bed, like feeling like I can't get up, right? And just knowing that it's something, like it's whatever the spiritual thing, the planets, whatever it is, like putting you out. But me, I want to fight. I'm like, no, I gotta go do something. I gotta, to be inactive, I guess sometimes like kills me, right? But I know I'm supposed to, you're supposed to recover. You're supposed to take time, right, to heal or whatever. Be getting your upgrades, right? Maybe that's what it is. It's almost like a computer when you're doing the thing. Oh, I have to update, and it takes time, right? And there's nothing you could do. You're like, all right, update it now, and it takes time. So that's kind of what I feel was happening, right? I was like that, like almost like when they were wheeling me on that gurney, right? I was just like, and that even happened today, and I was just out. And I looked at the clock, and I was like, what? Like 3 hours had already gone by, like in the middle of the day. Like I was like, you know, yeah, okay, whatever. I'll end it there. Thank you. Hope you're all well. Peace.
Life may move fast or it may move slow. I met a silly man who said he make it slow. We look up out towards space or even at the sky. One that gets away but never look inside. Breathe in, breathe out. Life is a man's move, figure this out. I mean, human beings, I ain't got no doubt.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sometimes you just feeling it, you know what I'm saying? You just feeling it. And I want to feel this way forever.